Hi, Phanessa here. In this video, I am going to demonstrate how to knit using the magic loop method. So you'll need a circular needle with a long cable. This one here is 32 inches. This one here that I have my work on is much longer. I thought I needed it that long, but this is 32 is good enough. So the magic loop is good for working in the round in a small circumference like these. Okay, it's an option for some folks that don't really care for the double pointed needles. A lot of people prefer the magic loop using circular needles. I've tried several different things. I'm still getting used to the double pointed needles. I like using the magic loop method so far more than the DPNs. And there are other options like flexible double pointed needles, which is probably my second favorite thing to use. All right, let's get started. Okay, so I have 30 stitches. What I'm going to do is divide these stitches in half, roughly half. So half of my 30 is 15. And the one thing you want to think about when you divide it is your stitch pattern. So my stitch pattern for this is in multiples of 5. So splitting it 15-15 is okay. Let's say your stitch pattern is in multiples of 2, so even number. Split it at about 16-14 or something like that. Just so that when you're working on one side, it's the right amount of stitches for your repeat of whatever stitch pattern you're working on. So I'm going to divide this in half. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15. So 15 is right here. I'm going to pull the cable between those two stitches so that they are both on the tips of my needles. So one of the biggest thing that I was confused about was how to start the very first round. So the first thing you want to do is what you would do just working in the round, making sure your stitches are not twisted. Okay, so you don't want it like twisted like that, or something like that. So the center has my bottom of the cast on, and then all of my loops are on the outside. No. So the stitches that you want to work into will stay on the needle, which is this one here, because this is where you've completed your cast on. The first stitch you want to work into is this one here. So what you're going to do is hold these together. Okay, they're not twisted. Making sure that the one you want to work into is in front of you, and then the one that you want to pull the needle out of is in the back. So if this fit into a regular circular needle, this is how you would hold your circular needles, working into this one. Okay, working in this direction. So I know my needles are not twisted here. I'm going to pull the needle out of the one in the back. And then I'll have like this much left here. Okay, so make sure that your working yarn is coming from back here instead of the other side. And because my stitch pattern starts with the purl, I want to make sure that my yarn is in the front of my work, like that. Okay, so I'm going to purl my first stitch by inserting my needle and purling the very first stitch. So that's why my yarn needs to be in the front. For the very first stitch, I want to make sure that I pull and make sure it's tight. And then I'm going to purl my next stitch. And then I'm going to work across in pattern. If you're interested in the pattern for this, it's currently being tested. It's the Gisela hand warmer. And so keep an eye out for that. I do have a full video tutorial for it as well. So if you subscribe to my channel and hit that notification button, you'll be notified when that video is live. And the pattern will be available in my shops, on my website, on my Etsy, Ravelry, and my Knit Crate shops. Okay, so I've completed this section. Again, my stitches were in multiples of 5, so I had 15, so I ended up here. So I ended right here. What I was trying to say earlier is if you didn't divide it according to your stitch pattern, you would have issues right at the end of this one and the beginning of this one, because it's going to be difficult to cross over when they're split like that. Because for this one, I had to slip a stitch, knit these two, and then pass that slip stitch over. If I had one stitch less and it was over here, it would just make it just wouldn't work out. So this is how I end it. I'm going to turn it around. I want to make sure that my yarn is still back here. Okay, so now I'm going to pull this one here in the front. Okay, so now I'm going to pull this one so that all my stitches are on this needle. And I'm going to pull the one from the back now. So I'm going to pull that, and then I'm going to start knitting here. Again, with my stitch pattern, I'm purling my first 2. So I'm going to bring my yarn forward and purl my first stitch. Again, I want to tug that because it's the first one between these 2 needles. And now I'm just going to knit across this needle. I'm at the end of my round. Okay, so I ended here. I'm going to turn, and then again I'm going to pull this one, and slide all of my stitches onto this needle. Get my tail out of the way. And now I'm going to, I always make sure that my working yarn is here so it doesn't get all tangled up. I'm going to pull the one from behind the needle and then start working in this direction. So this is the beginning of my round. You can usually tell by the tail, but if you need to place a marker, you can just place one right on the first stitch. Okay, so that's what you do. You just repeat every time you get to the end of one needle. You want to turn, and then you want to pull the needle from behind, making sure that the front needle has all of your stitches that you want to work into. And then you repeat, and that's how you work in the round using the magic loop. Okay, so now I'm turning it, pull this one back so that I place all of the stitches that I want to work into next on the needle that's in front of me. Grab the needle that's behind, pull it out, and start working across. Each time you switch to a new needle, make sure that you tighten that gap. Okay. Once you get through a few rows, it's easier to manage. That's how I feel. Okay, turned it around, slide the front needle so that all of the stitches are on the needle, pull the back needle, and start knitting across. So with some practice, you'll get used to this. I never really gave it much practice before, so I'm still just trying to get used to it. But since designing this hand warmer. I've been knitting several pairs as gifts just because it helps me continue to improve working in the round using the magic loop method. I will have a video for working with double pointed needles and with the bendable or the flexible double pointed needles, which I also love. Okay, I found that with this one, because the cable was way too long, I would get tangled in it. So if you have a small circumference, don't go too long with your cable. Okay, so the few things that I keep in mind to help me have a better experience with this is when I turn my work and I'm ready to start the next needle, the front needle is the one that I want to work into. My working yarn, I want to make sure it comes to the back. Even though my first stitch is a purl, which means I need it in the front here, but I found that it helped me just to kind of keep it where it needs to be before I start. So the stitches on the needle that's in front of you is the stitches you want to work into. The needle in the back is the one you want to pull out. And then this is where I move my yarn forward to start knitting my first purl stitch. And then the very first stitch of the new needle, you want to tighten. And again, if you don't have a marker, the tail is an indication that you're at the beginning of the round. If you have a lot of stitches, you want to make sure that your cable is long enough. This is 30 stitches, and I'm using a US 9, and the cable is 32 inches, and it's just right, as you can see here. If you prefer it a little bit longer, then go longer than 32 inches. It's always a safe bet if you go with the longest cable you have, which is 40 or something like that. Okay, turn. I always pull this first because I feel like if I pull this first, everything's on a cable and I'm more likely to lose where I'm at. Okay, now I'm going to start working on this needle. Okay, so that is how you knit in the round using the magic loop method. I've been waiting a really long time to be able to demonstrate this so that I can create new designs and also provide a video tutorial for it as well. So I'm excited that I was able to finally record this tutorial. Alright, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing. It really helps out my channel. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you'll be notified every time I post a video. I'll see you next time.
Thank you.